Good morning. So do you feel loved today? All right. It's like you belong to Christ or something. We love that. We're talking this year about evangelism, but one of the things that I wanted us to begin with is being the right kind of people, to reach people. And we emphasize love and unity. And today I'm going to be emphasizing something that maybe we haven't talked a lot about in the church, but something that is so important and so essential. One of the things that I love to do on an annual basis, every year, is I try to come up with a plan. And I try to come up with a plan on how to grow spiritually. How can I improve this year spiritually? And how can I grow as a minister to be more effective? And so one of the things that I often do is I look at people who are lost and then people who need Christ, and I often think, where's the trends going in order to try to reach them? What are people needing? What are all the signs saying? These are issues that people really need to focus on and in order to reach these kind of people that are struggling with these. And so one of the things that I've decided to really grow in and plan on this year, and I tend to do a lot of book reading, and I'm required to read a lot of books to keep up some of my certifications and things like that, is this year I'm really focusing on tackling some of the issues of depression and anxiety. Now, people often say, well, why? Well, I'm going to tell you this right now. If we're going to try to reach people, especially young people, in the next decade and 2 decades and so forth, we have to understand what we're going to be going up against. And one of the things that we hear more and more about is people in this world talking about how depressed and anxious they are. And even over this, since the beginning of the year, I've had even more young people telling me about how depressed and anxious they are, and some of them don't even belong to our church. They'll Google our church, they'll call me up, because they'll say, well, ministers are a free resource, and maybe no one knows me. And so they'll find my cell phone number, it's all over the place. And so one of the things that I have decided to do over this year is to really dive into this. And what's really interesting is there's a lot of good new research coming out, because a lot of the good academic research usually takes about 20 to 30 years to research it. And so I'm reading all this content, and I'm reading these books, and I'm reading these stories, I'm listening to these podcasts, I'm watching these videos, and it's amazing the new information that we're coming. And I believe that the approaches to handling depression and anxiety from this new content that I'm looking at and some of the new research that is now coming out is becoming a lot better. You know, back in the olden days when depression and anxiety wasn't as well known and understood and studied, they often just thought that depression was merely just a broken brain. They just thought it was a serotonin level, and if you just fix the serotonin level, you'll be better. The problem with that is people would get higher serotonin levels and they would still be depressed. They would feel emotionally better in the moment, but they wouldn't be better. And so they've discovered we got to study this and we got to make a shift. And I believe that we're going towards a healthy trend in trying to impact this, because instead of having a broken brain, we're discovering more so of how it's really about a broken heart and a broken life. And before, they would scan your brain and they would say, okay, this is how we're going to prescribe and help you out. But now they're starting to take more time to ask, well, what's going on in your life? That's a question that they didn't really start asking till about the 70s, 80s. And now, more so, because the studies are showing the impact of this, we're discovering more of the root causes of what's causing depression. Why do people remain in depression? Why are they spiraling down in depression? How to really resolve them? If it's more than just an issue in the brain, which they're discovering really isn't as much of an issue as they actually thought it was. And so we've been asking this question, what's going on in your life? And so all these researchers from Harvard to Stanford to Duke University, I've been reading all these different studies. And one of the things that they have discovered is that one of the greatest forms of causes of depression is loneliness. Loneliness. And you know what? Depressed people often get even lonelier because they put themselves in a state that make them sometimes difficult to be around. And so they perpetuate the system. And so one of the things that they've discovered is loneliness actually precedes depression a lot of the time. That is one of the most common indicators and factors that they've discovered among people who are depressed. And they're now asking these questions: do you have close relationships in your life? Who are your closest confidants? Do you know what's interesting is in the 1970s, they would ask this question: how many close confidants do you have? People whom you feel close enough to share your secrets to. That's what a confidant is. And do you know what the answer was in America in the 1970s? The answer was 3. 3. In 2004, they came up with another their study, and they asked this question: how many close confidants do you have? Do you know what the answer is now in America? Almost the majority of people said 0. 0. And what's interesting is they thought maybe social media would be one of the things that will bring people together, because most sociologists and psychologists have discovered, you know what, loneliness is obviously an epidemic that we have not really talked about in America, and it's getting worse. Maybe social media will bring us closer. What they've discovered is social media is actually starting to cause people to be even more lonely. And so how do we combat that? You know, one of the interesting things is they've discovered one of the solutions you have to have if you're really trying to overcome depression is you have to have friendship. And people are often saying, we've had this old school mentality that says, well, if you have a problem, solve it on your own. Well, maybe you can't necessarily completely solve it on your own. And here's the interesting thing is, if you look at all of these things that they're stating about the solutions for depression, it follows the Bible very, very well. Do you remember why God created women in the first place? It says it's not good for man to be what? Alone. And so he created women. And then he says, increase and multiply. And do you know what's interesting as well? When Christ died, buried, and rose again, did he just give us a relationship with God, or did he establish the church? He established the church. What's interesting is God knew something that we didn't on a psychological level. That maybe he understood something about how we are. And what a lot of these studies have discovered is they would ask, well, look at all these different factors that can cause depression. Why is it that there's some of these Aborigine clubs and people groups, why is it that they have a very low level of depression even though they're hunting monkeys and have little clothing and they have little shelter? Why is it that they have a lower level of depression than Americans who have everything? And what they discovered is that these communities, these people groups, do almost everything together. They're religious together, whether it's Christian or not. They hunt together. They cook together. And in fact, there was one guy who, in this small African village, this guy lost his legs from a landmine that was randomly placed. And so he was depressed. He could not do the work that some of the other men could do. And so he fell into a great level of depression. And so the psychologists from America and the UK, they kind of studied, and they said, well, they went to the community elders and said, well, what you guys need to do is to help him feel better. You know, give him an antidepressant. And so do you know what his community did? His community bought him a cow. They bought him a cow, and they brought this cow to the man. And they gave him this cow, and the guy got happy because he couldn't do all the farming. But he could now milk a cow, and he could make milk. And he could make butter. He could make cheese. He had some self-worth. And the whole community they all sacrificed, and they all just surrounded this one guy with no legs. And guess what? His level of depression went away. And what they discovered was, that's one of the things that we have to understand about depression, is that you can't defeat it alone. And in fact, that's the wisdom of why God has relationships. You want to know why there's so many one another passages in the scriptures? You want to know why the Bible doesn't just say, focus on your relationship with God and you guys just focus on each other and you'll be happy. And in fact, we need each other. This is why relationships are so important. You know, I don't want us to ever be a kind of people where we're like the typical Americans, where they ask, how many confidants do you have? And we say, 0. Because a lot of times we feel like that. And because of the culture we live in, sometimes we have to put up a guard and we have to put up a face and we have to smile and say, everything's dandy. And I have everything that culture tells me I should have in order to be an acceptable human being. I got a house, a car, I got a good job, I got status, I got money. Yeah, but who are the people in your life? You know, that's one of the good questions that I love people starting to ask that question. Who are the people in your life? And how are you helping them, and how are they helping you? And are they healthy relationships? You know, one of the interesting things is we know that there was a great king by the name of King David. And King David, as you know, wrote a lot of the Psalms. And I tell people, if you want to know the reality of human emotion, read the Psalms by David. Because some of them are very happy, joyful, blessing Psalms, and other of them are like, I'm depressed, I'm sad, I want everyone to die. That's kind of what David kind of implied by a lot of his Psalms. And what's interesting, and a scholar, as I was reading this theologian said, you know, we look at King David, and King David started really well. He started with killing the giant, and he had this great faith. He was a commander in Saul's army. He was a leader among men. But one of the things that this theologian pointed out was he had a close relationship with the king's son, Jonathan. They had such a great bond. And in fact, this theologian went on to say, do you know when we actually start seeing when David started making a lot of life mistakes? It was when Jonathan was killed. And I remember him writing that, and I remember thinking, this theologian, I was like, wait, I got to go back in the Bible. And so I was looking, and I was like reading, yeah, Jonathan's killing Goliath, he's killing the Philistines, he's killing his tens of thousands of people are loving him, he's doing all these righteous things, and I was just like, whoa. He really started making his worst mistakes when he didn't have a godly friend to encourage him and hold him accountable. Maybe it would have been different had Jonathan said, hey, David, you know Bathsheba? Yeah, she's gorgeous, but you're already married. And he's your buddy's wife. He's one of your mighty men. Uriah is one of your mighty men. You know, I often think, Jonathan would have probably said something like that had he been alive. And maybe David was lacking some relationship in his life. And I thought, maybe we need to develop godly relationships. Because if I asked you, who's in your life? Who is your confidant? How many people do you have who are in the church and godly? And I don't want to just focus on friendships, because everyone has friendships to a degree, but godly friendships. Because there is a difference. You know, bad company corrupts good character. You can have some bad friends. But what about good friends? Now, one of the things about Jonathan is Jonathan was a godly man, and he's one of the few people in the Bible where there's hardly anything negative said about him in Scripture. You read through about Jonathan. Jonathan was a righteous man, and he was a good friend. And so today I want us to look at how can we develop these friendships. If I ask you, who are your confidants at Center Road, who would you say? If I said, who fills up your cup, who encourages you, and who are you encouraging and filling up, and who are you holding accountable, and who's holding you accountable, and who's helping you make better life and Christ-focused decisions, who would you say? Or maybe if I asked you, do you have anyone right now that is doing that for you? Maybe you would say, I actually feel kind of lonely. Or maybe I feel like I can't be the real me because people will judge me or criticize me or devalue me. You see, this is why I want us to develop godly friendships, because if we can get this right here and have that true love and unity, a world that you talk to people who don't have Christ, most of them are depressed. And we know why. Americans say, I have 0 people really who I really feel close to, confidant level close. And so I want us to develop these relationships with one another. I want us to be able to look at the people on our left and on our right in our congregation and say, you know what, these are my confidants. These are my best friends, and I can be me. And you know what? Yes, I'm going to struggle. Yes, I'm going to have flaws. Yes, I'm going to have baggage. Yes, I'm going to have problems. That's why we go to Christ daily. And this is why you encourage me and I encourage you. Let me tell you this. If we were perfect people, we wouldn't need to forgive each other. We wouldn't need to encourage each other. We wouldn't need to show mercy to each other. We wouldn't need to love each other. We'd be perfect. We are all here because we're not perfect. But we help each other to be like the one who is. We need these relationships. So I want to talk about developing godly relationships by looking at the relationship that King David had with Jonathan. And this was prior to his kingship. But one of the things that we know is to have godly relationships, you got to have commitment. Who are the people who are going to stick by you? Who are the people that you will stick by? The people who in your life, you say, I could call them at 3 o'clock in the morning. They'll help me out. I want us to have a church where every single person in this church has friends where they know that they have a commitment to. Yes, I understand we're a church of over 200 people. You cannot be close to 200 people at the same level. I get that. I want you to love every single person in the church. But I want you to at least have some people in the church. And even begin with a few or one. And start with commitment. Look at what the level of commitment Jonathan had with David. In 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 1 through 5, it says, "As soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. And Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of that robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt. And David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him. So that Saul sent him over the men of war, and this was good in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants." You see, one of the interesting things here is we see that David and Jonathan loved each other. They loved each other as themselves, and they had this covenant. When you think about loving your neighbor as yourself, that was Jonathan and David. They were close, and they had this covenant. They said, I am committed to you, and you are committed to me, and we will not be torn apart. And Jonathan, being a prince, he was a prince. And he said, I have this level of honor. But you know what? I honor my friend, so I'm going to give him my robe. And I'm going to give him my armor, and my sword, and my bow, and my belt. You know what? In that time, when you gave people those type of items, that was the highest form of honor of a king to a subject. He was honoring David. He was committed to him. Are there people in this church who you have that level of commitment to? That covenant where you say, I would do anything for them, and they would do anything for me. That we are loving each other as I love my neighbor. We got to have that commitment. And that's one of the things about our culture. We're in a culture that says, I don't really care about relationships. I'll throw it away. I'm done. We don't want to be a throwaway culture. We want to, in the hard times, we stick together. We stick together. And you know what? Controversy is going to happen. And it's even going to hit close to home because the controversy is going to involve Jonathan's own father. And one of the things that we see is there was a level of commitment. Are you guys committed to me? Am I committed to you? Are you guys committed to each other? And when you have a friend that says, they love me despite, that actually helps a lot. Now, does that mean you condone things? No, it does not. Does that mean you'll remain silent when your friend's doing stupid things? No, it does not. But it does say, even in the hard times, I'm by your side, and I'm going to help you. And I'm going to help you towards God. That's one of the differences between a friendship and a godly friendship, is that covenant emphasizes the covenant that we first have with the Creator. And that's one of the things that godly relationships do, is they have a covenant, but they always exemplify the covenant that parties have first with God. Another one is friends always protect. Godly friends. If I know my buddy is struggling spiritually, am I praying for them? Am I encouraging them? Am I holding them accountable? Am I strengthening them? Am I gentle? Am I showing mercy? Am I showing kindness? Are you protecting each other? And sometimes protecting each other is not an easy thing to do. You know, sometimes you even have to endure some of the punishment for the sake of your friend. You know, you think about dignitaries with their bodyguards. Sometimes you got to be your friend's bodyguard. Sometimes you will take some shots for your friend. But do we protect each other? Do we guard each other's secrets? You know, the Bible really talks about guarding secrets, not gossiping, not slandering. Do you keep those things? Do you try to preserve people's face? Do you care about each other's heart? Do you first care about the relationship with God? You know, one of the things that sets apart a godly relationship and a different relationship is a godly friend will say, you know what, I'm even willing to put my relationship on the line with you if you'll keep your relationship with God first. You see, that's the difference between a godly friendship and a regular friendship. And the focus is that as Christians, especially as followers of God, we want our friends to know God. And one of the things that we know is Jonathan protected David. He will take some shots from his father, Saul. But he did it because love protects. You know, 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 12 through 15 says this. Then Jonathan said to David, I swear by the Lord, the God of Israel, that I will surely sound out my father by this time, the day after tomorrow. If he is favorably disposed toward you, will I not send you word and let you know? But if my father intends to harm you, may the Lord deal with Jonathan, be it ever so severely, if I do not let you know and send you away in peace. May the Lord be with you as he has seen with my father, but show me unfailing kindness like the Lord's kindness, as long as I live, so that I may not be killed. And do not ever cut off your kindness from my family, not even when the Lord has cut off every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth. So this is a situation where Saul was trying to kill David, and David went to Jonathan and was like, hey, your dad's trying to kill me. And Jonathan's like, no, my dad's not trying to kill you. He would tell me. And they're like, okay, well, let's figure it out. And Jonathan said, you know, I will protect you. I will protect you, and I will care for you. And if my daddy really is trying to kill you, I will let you know. And if I don't, God will deal with me. But also, please protect me. And one of the things is, it went both ways. It wasn't just one protector and one who needed protecting. They protected each other. Because he said, you know what, David? Don't cut me off when you become king. And in fact, when Jonathan died, one of the things that David did was he found the son of Saul, the crippled son of Jonathan, and he found Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth, and he honored him and let him sit at David's table, and he provided for all of his needs. And so love protects. Are you protecting each other? Let me tell you, Satan is attacking you right now. Satan is attacking your friend right now. Satan is attacking the church right now. And do you know what one of the best protections God gave us? Each other. We sometimes forget that Satan's afraid of Christ's church. Why? Because Satan cannot overpower Christ's church. And so we have to remember that. Love protects. Another one, love as you love yourself. You know, we live in a culture where everyone loves themselves. I love what I think, I love what I say, and I want everyone to like what I think and say. It's about me. But what if we have the attitude that says, you know what, I love you not as I love myself, I love you more than myself. You know, that's one of the attitudes that Jesus Christ had. That Jesus didn't just love us as he loved himself, he actually loved us more than himself. Because he was willing to die on a cross with the weight of the world's sins upon him for people who hated him. That's not just loving like he loved himself. He was saying, I will humble myself and put you above myself. And this is one of the things about having a godly relationship with friends. Do you have people in this church that you love dearly? And that you know that they love you. And maybe there are times in your life where you're going to need to call someone and say, you know, I'm really struggling. Can you just love on me? Can you just listen to me? Can you just pray for me? Can you encourage me? And there are going to be times when you're going to see your friend or your friends, and you're going to see them hurting or struggling and having needs, and you're going to say, you know what? I see that something's bothering. Can we pray? Can we listen to you? Can we encourage you? Can we care about you? You see, it's reciprocal. But we have to have relationships in the church. And let me tell you, if every Christian had relationships in this church like that, which is really a scriptural kind of relationship, then your faith would grow, your joy would grow, your peace would grow, your love would grow, and guess what? You would be less vulnerable to Satan's attacks. And so one of the things is we have to love as you love yourself. And this is what Jonathan and David did. And one of my greatest thoughts is, I remember seeing this video of two World War II veterans that they went through basic together, they went through all the whole war together, and they were in their 90s, and one of the guys, and they made an agreement, they said, whoever dies first, the other one will stand attention at his casket. And so what was really neat was one of the guys did die. And guess what this guy did? He got on his uniform and he stood attention by his friend's casket. And shortly, not too long after, that guy died. You know, they were so close to each other. And I thought, you know what? That was a warrior buddies, just like Jonathan and David, because they were warrior buddies too. But they loved each other that much. I want every person in this church to love each other. And people will say, well, I don't have a relationship like that. Let me tell you like this. I'm an introvert, as you guys know, even though it may not seem like it. I have to work at it extremely hard. After church, I run to my man cave and hide under my covers. You know, that's the kind of person I am. And I've had to really, really, really work at it. But I remember in junior high, I struggled with making friends. And when I was in elementary school, I was friends with everybody. We all got along, and then when we got into junior high, there was something called cliques, and I guess I didn't know, because I didn't get the memo, and then it's just like, okay, well, I'm not a skater, I don't have a skateboard, I'm not a preppy, I don't have money, I did play sports, but I didn't play on the football team, so I wasn't really with the jocks. I was just like, I was the guy with no clique. I was like, I have no friends. And then I'm like, and I'm too timid to make friends, so what in the world do I do? And then I used my little strategic brain, and I thought, okay, I need friends. I'm not in the clique. So how do I get friends? And so I strategized, and I figured, you know, there's only one group of people that seems more scared at school than I am, and that's the new kids. And so one of the things that I did was anytime we had a new kid, I ran to that kid and I said, do you want to go have lunch with me today? And they always said yes. And so it's funny, so in my junior high years, I had friends that were preppies and skaters and emos and whatever all the cliques were back then. And then it was like, why? And then the reason was because I made friends with the new kids who were just as scared as I was about friendships. And guess what? We didn't let those different cliquish type things keep us apart, but because we loved each other, that was what kept us together. And this is how we have to love each other. In 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 16 through 17, it says this. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord call David's enemies to account. And Jonathan had to reaffirm his oath out of love for him, because he loved him as he loved himself. One of the things that I think we need to do on a regular basis is reaffirm our love for one another. You know, sometimes we forget that we love each other. You know, it's kind of why it's so important that, like, even as parents, it's important, for instance, I've had a lot of people grow up, especially in the older generation, say, well, I know mom and dad love me because she made dinner and he went and did a job. They provide for my needs. But how much more so a lot of them say, you know, I wish mom and dad every day would have said, you know, I love you. I love you. And guess what? They would say, well, I know they love me, but then they would know, I know without a shadow of doubt they love me. What if we did that? We reaffirmed love for each other. We did things that showed love, like our commitment, our time together. You know, one of the things that I keep emphasizing is we're talking among our leaders about simplifying some of the things we do in the church. And part of that is because I want us to make more time for each other. Instead of just being busy doing things, be together. And one of the interesting things is you read the early church, you know, sometimes we get this modern Americanized saying, okay, the church's idea of ministry, a whole bunch of people getting together and they do something. But as I read the New Testament a little bit more, I realize being together really was the ministry, a large part of it. I mean, where does encouragement happen? Where does spiritual growth happen? And guess what? People of the world are naturally drawn to that and be like, they insanely love each other that much? You mean that person did that bad thing and they still like her? And they still like him? But they don't tolerate it and say, you know what? Yeah, that's a bad thing and we're just going to let it be that way. They surround that person and say, you know, we love you. and what you're doing is wrong, but we're just going to stand by you and help you so that you don't longer do that bad thing anymore, or he doesn't do that bad thing anymore. We don't want people to stay where they're at and just be, indifferent. But true love says, I'm going to protect you spiritually from Satan. I'm going to be committed to you. And that doesn't mean just being your friend in bad times. It means helping you love you one step closer to Christ. And so one of the things is we have to reaffirm this. This is one of the reasons why I have us get up every Sunday before the sermon, because I don't want anyone to ever leave those doors not having people say, I love you, I care about you, I want you, I need you, I value you, and your presence does make a difference, and when you're not here, I notice, and it does negatively impact me. Why? Because, when the body doesn't have a finger, the rest of the body knows. I want every single person here to know, I love you, that your church loves you, and we need to grow in this area. And if you are maybe like me, maybe you're not the best at making friends, maybe you wish, well, maybe everyone else can come to me and be my friend. I realized in my junior years, that didn't always work. So maybe you got to be the more proactive one. And guess what? When you are, people are looking for friendships too. If you make the first move, sometimes other people will let you be their friend. And so love people. And then the last one I really want to emphasize is sacrifice. People don't really understand this. Every love manifests itself in sacrifice. How do we know that God so loved the world? He gave sacrifice. One of the interesting things is people say, how much did Jonathan love David? Do you want to know how much he loved David? More than a kingdom. More than a kingdom. Because one of the interesting things is Jonathan is going to, because who's next in line for the kingship after if Saul died? It would be Jonathan. But what does Jonathan do? He says, David, I know you're going to be king. And you know what? I could kill you. I could pull out a knife, stab you in the stomach, and say, hey, I'm going to be the next king of Israel. Jonathan didn't do that. He actually acknowledges, David, you're going to be king. Don't cut me off. And in fact, he says, you know what? I love you more than a crown. I love you more than a throne. I love you more than a kingdom. Can you imagine if we loved each other that much? I mean, isn't that what the early church did? They said, you know what? We care about each other so much. We're so radical. I'm willing to sell my horse and cart, whatever, so that you can have some food. They were just so radical in that regard. We have to sacrifice for each other. What if we were willing to sacrifice our ego, the standards of this world, everything that the world tells us we need to do and have and be, so that we can make time for each other and say, you know, I don't have to be the CEO of a company. Maybe I can have more time so that I can give that time to you. I don't have to have all the fancy things. Maybe I can sacrifice a little bit so that those who have less can have a little bit more. You know, sacrifice. Saying, I value you more than fill in the blank. Do you honestly think people would not want to be a part of that kind of church? That's the church God has called us to be. That's the kind of love that Jonathan and David had. You want to know why David would listen to Jonathan? Why David trusted Jonathan? Why David cared about Jonathan? Because he knew Jonathan loved him to the point of sacrifice at his own expense for the benefit of his friend. When you know that your friend is willing to sacrifice at their expense for you, you know they love you. And when you love people enough to sacrifice for them, whether they want it, need it, or deserve it, at least something in their mind goes, oh, she really does care about me. Or, whoa, he really does care about me. It's about sacrifice. Look at 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 28 through 33 to finish this off. Jonathan answered, David earnestly asked me for permission to go to Bethlehem. And he said, let me go, because a family is observing a sacrifice in the town, and my brother has ordered me to be there. If I have found favor in your eyes, let me get away to see my brothers. That is why he has not come to the king's table. There's a discussion Jonathan's having with Saul. Saul's anger flared up at Jonathan, and he said to him, you son of a perverse and rebellious woman, don't I know that you have sided with the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of the mother who bore you? As long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. So Saul and Jonathan both knew this fact. Now send someone to bring him to me, for he must die. Why should he be put to death? What has he done? Jonathan asked his father. But Saul hurled his spear at him to kill him. Then Jonathan knew that his father intended to kill David. How much did Jonathan love David? He acknowledged what Saul said was right. Yeah, my kingdom's going to be torn away. Why are you trying to kill my buddy? Isn't that interesting? So Jonathan knew, I'm giving up a kingdom to be friends with David, and this is the righteous thing to do. And he even protected his friend. Remember, he had a whole spear thrown at him from his dad. His dad called him some pretty bad words. We look at the original language, the kind of cuss type words, more so at his own son. It's really interesting to see that Jonathan was willing to sacrifice. So let me ask you, do you have people in this church who you're willing to sacrifice for? Would you be willing to sacrifice your kingdom for your church brothers or sisters? And do you have people in the church who do that for you? If the answer is no, we got to work on this area. If we can't be friends with each other, we're going to have a hard time helping people be friends with God. And so one of the things that we need to do is we need to grow in this culture. This is why if you've missed the last few weeks of sermons, go back online and watch them, because we are going to change this world. That's not a might or will. We are absolutely will. Why? Because we're going to love each other extremely. We're going to unify biblically. We're going to have friends. And so if these researchers from Duke and Harvard and Stanford said, hey, Center Road Church, how many close confidants do you have? You're going to say, wait, let me count. And you're going to arrest people. And then you're going to tell them why. And how you love them and what you do for them and what they do for you. And they're going to be like, whoa, there's something weird about those people. And we're going to say, yes, we're Christians. We're followers of Jesus Christ. We are the church that belongs to the Savior. So church family, let us grow in love and unity, and let's grow these godly friendships. If today you need a friend, look for one today. We're going to be eating a good potluck meal. I hope you put on your fat pants today because we're going to eat well. And if you need a friend, go find someone to sit by. Sit by someone who you're not used to sitting by and build that friendship. Look for someone who needs a friend and be their friend. They'll probably accept it. And if you do that, guess what? We'll grow this love for one another. So at this time, if you need us to pray for you, encourage you as your friends, during our invitation song, come forward and let us pray for you and encourage you. And if today you want to be a friend of God and allow Him to wash your sins away, to protect you, to be committed to you, to sacrifice for you, we give you the opportunity to profess your faith, to commit, repent, and be baptized for the forgiveness of your sins. We give you the opportunity as we now stand and sing.
So sweet is the song I'm singing to.